Good morning. Welcome to another coffee tasting. I'm your host, Aaron Taylor. Today we are trying the Ethiopia Chelelektu. This is going to be the Yirgacheffe blend. It is a really good blend, and the really cool part about this particular cup of coffee is it's going to be the origin of all coffee itself. The first documentation discovery of coffee. With this particular Ethiopia blend, it's going to have notes of floral and tangerine and raspberry acidity. So it's going to be a very, very bright cup of coffee. And then today we are brewing the coffee on the coffee press and the pour over. And so the reason why we brew the coffee two different ways is so that we can explore the different flavor notes that we get from different brew processes, but from the same cup of coffee. So with the coffee press, we're going to see more of the floral notes come through, um, and it's going to be very, very bright and acidic. The paper filter, it's going to just mellow it out a bit much, but because this is such a very, very bright floral cup of coffee, um, we're going to get the same attributes from both processes, but the other one is just going to be more predominant in flavor. And so it's going to be really good. I'm not a big fan of the floral coffees, but the Ethiopia Chelelektu always provides a really, really good cup of coffee. So with our small lot coffees, each small lot coffee has a story to tell from the area that it comes from. And with this particular coffee, it's all about the origin of coffee itself. So coffee was discovered, for the first documentation discovery of coffee was in Ethiopia. A goat herder by the name of Aldi noticed that his goats would get elated from eating from a particular shrub. And so one day he decided to try the cherries himself and found that he got extra energy from the cherries as well. And so thus the discovery of the coffee cherry and then other processing methods were born years after. And this dates back to about a thousand years ago, where the first discovery of coffee was. And it's really cool to see like the different changes that coffee has gone through, and then how young coffee is compared to other things in the world. Like 1,000 years isn't very old, um, in like when you compare it to other things. Um, and so with this coffee, it's really a tribute to the origin of coffee, and then the people who grow coffee in this area today, they call their farms gardens. So they don't call them farms; they call them gardens, and then they, instead of referring to them in size by hectares, they're referred to size by the number of trees that their gardens have. And then at the same time, when they pick their cherries, they only pick the reddest, ripest cherries when it's ready to harvest the cherries. That way, each and every cup of coffee is refined and has the impeccable flavor that they're looking for. And so, this is really cool cup of coffee. This is one of my favorite stories to talk about the origin of coffee, because not a lot of people know that coffee comes from Africa and Ethiopia. And so, and then it's really cool. I've actually tried a couple other Ethiopia Chelelektu coffees. So, like right here on my coffee wall, I have Ethiopia Yirgacheffe Shelba, and this one was a very interesting cup of coffee because the tasting notes were lemon pepper and fruit. And when you see the lemon pepper, you're like, okay, slight notes of like lemon, um, like a bright peppery note, like spicy note. But no, it literally tasted like there was pepper added to the coffee. It was wild. I never tasted anything like it before. It was unique definitely unique. So this is a different Yirgacheffe coffee, but instead of Shoba, it is Chelelektu. So it's from a slightly different region of Ethiopia, but still dedicated to the same origin. And we're going to get different tasting notes because of what is grown in the area. Everything that's grown in the area um, is going to impact the flavor of the coffee, and that's why these small lot coffees are important, because when you get a small lot coffee, you're getting refined coffee from a specific region, and that means you're going to get flavor that's being provided from a specific region. And typically, when you get an African coffee, you're going to get those very bright acidic notes because most of the time, coffee from Africa or in the especially when you get closer to the equator and the coffee belt, you're going to have a lot of sun-dried coffee, and when you get sun-dried coffee, you're going to have a lot of those bright acidic notes that are in the cherry get dried and absorbed into the bean, and so that's where a lot of those bright acidic notes come from in a sun-dried process. And so if you're looking for more of like those earthier notes, you want to go for like a semi-wash that you see in like Indonesian coffee, or if you want to have more of like the caramely milk chocolate notes, you want to go for like a fully wash that you see in like typical to like Latin American coffees. But with these small lot coffees, they don't follow the typical rules that our core coffees follow, where it's like specific to region, because with our small lot coffees, a lot of the processing happens at the place of growing. And with the small lot coffees, because they come from specific regions of the world, they're going to have different environments that don't allow them to do things that are typical to their region. So, for instance, African coffees are typical to sun dry until you start to get small lot coffee from areas of Africa that are more tropical or have a wetter climate, because when you get a wetter climate, if you try and sun dry your coffee, the amount of moisture in the air is gonna mold your cherries, and so sun dried coffee in certain parts of Africa, especially the northeast parts of Africa, you're not gonna have a lot of opportunity for sun drying, because you're gonna see a lot more of that tropical atmosphere uh, affecting it. But because you have that tropical atmosphere, you're going to have different flavors impacting the coffee and the the floral growth around it, and then also it's going to impact the soil. So you're gonna end up with different flavors, and so it's important to process it the way you need to extract those flavors from that area. And so with this coffee, the Ethiopia Chelelektu, it's going to have bright acidic notes with floral lingering effects. That's not normally my favorite cup of coffee, but we're going to compare the flavor notes that we get from a pour over to a coffee press. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to like the coffee press more, just because it's going to die down that acidity and probably bring forward more of those like bitter floral flavors. So yeah, the history of coffee is very very young, and one of my favorite references to how young coffee is the invention of the coffee filter. The coffee filter was invented in 1909 by a German housewife, and so the paper coffee filter is just barely over 100 years old. And in terms of other history, that is extremely young. So you'd have to think like, my grandma at some point, well, not my grandma, but my great grandma at some point probably drank coffee without a filter, probably percolated through a metal mesh, or maybe even with the grind still in the cup. So that's wild to think that, not that far back, paper filters weren't really a thing. I mean, there might have been like other types of filters, like cloth filters, but with a cloth filter, you're gonna get too much filtered through. Too much is gonna absorb into the cloth, and you're gonna lose a lot of that flavor. And then you might even impact the flavor of the coffee from the cloth. With the paper filter, you're not gonna get a lot of that flavor carrying over into the coffee. Um, one of my an example of that is I hate using the wooden stir sticks, because the stir sticks, they have a particular woodsy flavor to themselves, and that wood flavor bleeds out into other items very easily. So by like say if you were to stir your coffee with a stir stick too long, that woodsy flavor is going to impact this stir stick. Uh, all right, so our coffee is ready to drink. So we have Ethiopia, Chelelektu, Yirgacheffe, the origin of coffee. All right, so immediately I can smell the bright notes coming off of it. It actually smells really good. I like that smell. It's got that very, very bright acidic flavor that I was expecting. And what's crazy is it actually has a slight peppery mouthfeel, like the Ethiopia shelba, which is the lemon pepper and fruit. It's not as overwhelming as the shelba is, but it still does have a slight peppery mouthfeel. It's got that really, really bright acidicness, and then the floral mouthfeel it isn't as strong as I was expecting. I was expecting like a very, very drow dry mouth feeling, um, but I'm not getting that at all. We probably will see that more in the excuse me. We'll probably see that more in the coffee press. That is very light. So the Ethiopia Yirgacheffe Chelelektu is a very, very light cup of coffee with bright acidic notes, with a slight, just a very, very slight floral tinge on the tongue, like a lingering floral tinge. It's not too overwhelming, so it's very nice. So the Ethiopia Chelelektu is very, very smooth and very, I would say, mild on the pour over. So now we're going to go ahead and taste the Ethiopia Chelelektu on the coffee press and see how it compares in flavor notes. And I'm expecting some more of that floral bite to come wash over the tongue and leave its footprint behind. Ooh, that's a hot cup of coffee. So the bright acidity takes more of a back seat on the coffee press, and then the bitter florals really come forward. And right now that I've kind of let my palate clear, what what I'm experiencing, and as I expected, was more of the dry mouth feeling that you get from like a florally wine. So right now I'm experiencing a dry mouth, with the bright notes on the side of my tongue, and it literally feels like I put like a flower petal on the tip of my tongue. That's the flavor that I'm getting right now. And so with that floraliness, we're getting more of those bitters, because the floral is that bitter that we're tasting, and then the bright acidity is on the sides of our tongue, and we're not getting as much of that on the French press. But that's because a lot more of those bitters with the sediment and more oils uh, is impacting the palate a lot more, and so it we're not tasting the acidity as much because the bitters are so pronounced in the coffee press. Still a really good cup of coffee, but it is much more easier to drink as a pour over, just because it's more balanced. The bitters and the bright notes kind of balance each other out to make a balanced cup of coffee. While the coffee press, the bitters are going to be much more pronounced. The bright acidic notes are going to take a back seat, and then you're going to have more of a florally mouth feel from the coffee press. So the Ethiopia coffee, it's dedicated to the the origins of the discovery of coffee, um, and then there's just tons of other things that partake in the history of coffee, that impact the different communities, and it's just really fun to learn, especially with my coffee journey through time. Like at first, it started off with just wanting the black apron, just because I thought it looked cool. And then as I began my coffee journey to become a coffee master, I learned all these different stories about how coffee impacts the community, and what Starbucks does for these communities. And even in the communities that Starbucks doesn't have an opportunity to help them, they're just rich with culture and story and history. To just learn those stories is really cool, and then to be able to share those stories with you guys is even cooler. So that's why it's become my passion, to not just learn these stories, but to share these stories with you guys. Because if I didn't share these stories with you guys, some of you guys would never learn the history of Aldi the goat herder and how his goats got elated from eating a cherry from a shrub, and now from that it just cultivated a long history of processing coffees different ways. And I mean, who knows how long coffees were eaten as a cherry before people realized, you could take the seed out and roast it and brew it as a cup of coffee. Like, so it's very interesting how over just a small span of 1,000 years, pretty much 10 generations, or if you're judging generations by 50, 20 generations, 50 years old, uh, coffee can evolve in such a way. And then it's still evolving with different brewing processes, and the recent invention of the espresso machine, which is I think only like 100 and maybe almost 200 years old, the espresso machine. So it's fairly young, and so it's crazy to learn that, and you wouldn't. Some of us would never learn that without experiencing these coffee tastings. So I just want to thank everyone for joining me on these coffee tastings, where we tried the Ethiopia Chelelektu, starting off the new year of 2021 with the origins of coffee, the beginning of coffee itself. I hope everyone is having a great New Year so far. I know we're just about a weekend, so for us it's been pretty good. Um, we're hanging in there, keep drinking coffee, doing our thing, staying happy. So, my favorite between these two brew processes with this particular cup of coffee is going to be the pour over, just because I look for more of that smooth, balanced cup of coffee. Um, I'm not really into the bitters. If I'm going to drink if I'm going to drink the coffee black, so I will prefer this cup, or this particular blend on a pour over, versus the French press. If you guys have any questions about the origin of coffee, or Aldi the goat herder, um, go ahead and throw those down in chat. I'm more than willing to answer you guys' questions. And then while I wait for those questions, I'm going to sip on some Ethiopia Chelelektu. And if you guys are sipping on some Ethiopia alongside me, I hope you guys are enjoying the flavor notes as well as I am. This Friday, we are going to be tasting the Micro Blend number 10. With the Micro Blend number 10, that is our specialty blend made for cold brew. And so what I'm going to do is Thursday morning I'm going to start a cold brew process, and so that it'll be ready for Friday morning for the Friday morning's coffee. Excuse me. Friday morning's coffee tasting, and we're going to compare the Micro Blend number 10 brewed on a cold brew style versus a French press and a pour over. And we're going to explore those different flavor notes that we get through the 3 different processing methods. So that'll be really interesting, and then we'll explore the reasoning why um, the name is Microblend number 10, the same way we did with the Microblend 21, which was a really cool experience. Now I'm actually very curious as to whether or not it's a scientific reason, just like Microblend 21 was, or if it's just a number. So we'll find out on Friday whether or not Microblend 21 was just a random naming, or if there is a meaning behind the name. And we're going to explore that 3 different ways: cold brew style, French press, and pour over. Microblend number 10. Thank you everyone for joining the live stream. I hope everyone has a great rest of the week, and I will see you guys Friday at 9 a.m. for the Microblend number 10 coffee tasting. Have a great day. Thank you all for watching, and don't forget to subscribe and like and share this video with anyone you might think will like this video. And if you guys haven't seen any of my other coffee tastings, the videos will be posted right here, and then anything that Facebook recommends to you will be right up here. Alright, thank you guys. Have a great day.